Hey guys, happy Friday. Um, we left off yesterday. Remember, Omri was in art class and Boone decided to do some of the artwork. He was upset. He was so mad at Patrick. He wanted to be able to have some fun with the little men, and he ended up, I think, trying to it looks like he's going to take credit for what Boone drew out on the piece of paper. His teacher had just taken a look at the paper. She stared without speaking for about 2 minutes. Well, Omri felt inside him the beginnings of huge, gleeful, uncontrollable laugh. Abruptly, the teacher, who had been perched on a desk, stood up and went to the cupboard. Omri was not surprised to see a magnifying glass in her hand when she turned around. She put the paper down on a table and bent over it, with the glass poised. She examined the drawing for several minutes more. Her face was something to see. Some of the nearest children had become aware that something unusual was going on and were also craning to see what the teacher was looking at so attentively. Omri stood with the same innocent look on his face, waiting, the laugh slowly rising inside him. Fun? This was fun, if you liked. This was what he'd been imagining. The teacher looked at him. Her face was not quite as stunned as Mr. Johnson's had been, but it was an absolute picture of bafflement. "Omri," she said, "how in the name of all that's holy did you do this?" I like drawing small," said Omri quite truthfully. "Small? This isn't small. It's tiny. It's infinitesimal. It's microscopic." Her voice was rising higher with every word. Several of the other children had now stood up and were crowding around the paper, peering at it in absolute stupefaction. There's a good word. Small gasps and exclamations of wonder were rising on all sides. Omri's held in laugh threatened to explode. The teacher's eyes were now narrow with astonishment and doubt. "Show me," she said, "the pencil you used." This took Omri back, but only for a second. "I left it over there. I'll just go and get it," he said sweetly. He walked back to his table, his hand in his pocket. With the back turned, he bent over, apparently searching the tabletop. He turned around, smiling, holding something cupped in his hand. He walked back. "Here it is," he said, and held it out. Everyone bent forward. The art teacher took hold of his hand and pulled it toward her. "Are you putting me on, Omri? There's nothing there." "Oh, yes, there is." She peered close until he could feel her warm breath on his hand. "Don't breathe hard," said Omri, his laugh now trembling on his lips. "You'll blow it away. Maybe you'd better see it through the magnifying glass," he added kindly. She slowly raised the glass into position. She looked through it. "Can I see? Is it there? Can I look?" clamored the other children. All except Patrick. He was sitting by himself, not paying attention to the crowd around Omri. The art teacher lowered the glass. Her eyes were dazed. "I don't believe it. It's there. How do you pick it up? That's a bit of a secret method I have." "Yes," she said. "It must be. And you wouldn't feel like telling us?" "No," said Omri in a trembling voice. His laugh was on the verge. It was going to burst out. "May I be excused?" "Yes," she said in a dazed voice. "Go on." He took the drawing back and tottered to the door. He managed to get outside before the laugh actually blew out, but it was so loud, so overpowering, that he was obliged to go right out into the playground. There he sank onto a bench and laughed until he felt quite weak. Her face! He had never enjoyed anything so much in his whole life. It had been worth it. The bell rang and school was over. Omri brought out the men and held them up. "Guys," he said, "I enjoyed that, thank you. Now we're going to the shop." Omri ran all the way to Yap's and got there before most of the other children had even gotten out of the school. In 10 minutes, the place would fill full of kids buying potato chips and sweets and toys and comics. Just now, he had it to himself, and he had to make the most of the few minutes that he had. He went directly to the corner where the boxes of plastic figures were kept and stood with his back to the main counter. He was still holding Little Baron Boone in his hand, and he put them down among the figures in the Cowboys and Indians box. He hadn't reckoned on Boone's sensitive nature, however. "Holy catfish, look at all them dead bodies," he squeaked, hiding his eyes. "There must have been a massacre." "Not dead," said Little Bear scornfully. "Plastique." He kicked a plastic cowboy aside. "Too many," he said to Omri. "You find women, I choose." "You'll have to be quick," said Omri in a low voice. He was already rummaging through the box, picking out the Indian women. There were very few. Of the 5 he found, 1 was clearly old, and 2 had babies tied on their backs and parcels laced up like boots. "You don't want one with a baby, I suppose?" Little Bear gave him a look. No, I thought not," said Omri hastily. "Well, what else? Or what about these?" He stood the other 2 figures up on the edge of the table. Little Bear jumped down and faced them. He looked carefully at the first one and then at the other. They both looked the same to Omri, except that one had a yellow dress and the other a blue. Each had a black pigtail and a headband with a single feather and moccasins on her feet. Little Bear looked up. His face showed furious disappointment. "No good," he said. "But there aren't any others." Many plastique. You look good. Find another." Omri rummaged frantically right to the bottom of the box. Kids were beginning to come into the shop. He had almost despaired when he saw her. She lay face down at the very bottom of the box, half hidden by 2 cowboys on horses. He pulled her out. She was the same as the others, apparently, except that she wore a red dress. They obviously all came out of the same mold because they were all in the same position as if walking. If the others were ugly, he would think this one was too. Without much hope, he set her before Little Bear. He stood staring at her. The shop was getting busy now. At any moment, someone would come up behind him wanting to buy a plastic figure. "Well?" asked Omri impatiently. For another 5 seconds, Little Bear stared. Then, without speaking a word, he nodded his head. Omri didn't wait for him to change his mind. He scooped him and Boone back into his pocket and, picking up the approved figure, made his way to the counter. "Just this one, please," said Omri. Mr. Yap was looking at him, a very odd look. "Are you sure you only want the one?" he asked. "Yes." Mr. Yap took the plastic figure, dropped it into a bag, and gave it back to Omri. 10 pence. That's a British word for like 10 cents. Omri paid and left the shop. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. He spun around and it was Mr. Yap. The look on his face was now not odd at all, but red and angry. "Now you can hand over the 2 you stole." Omri stood aghast. "I didn't steal any." "Don't add lying to your faults, my lad. I watched you put them in your pocket, a cowboy and an Indian." Omri's mouth hung open. He thought he was going to be sick. "I didn't," he tried to say, but no words came out. "Turn out your pockets." "They're mine," Omri managed to gasp. "A likely story. And I suppose you brought them out to help you choose the new one?" "Yes." "Ha ha ha," said Mr. Yap heavily. "Come on, stop playing around. I lose hundreds of pounds worth of stuff every year to you thieving kids. When I do catch one of you red-handed, I'm not likely to let it pass. I know your sort. If I let you off, you'll be boasting to your pals at school about how easily you got away with it. And most likely you'd come back tomorrow for another pocketful." Omri was now fighting back tears. Quite a crowd had collected, much like the crowd in the art room. Some of the people even, but his feelings were no longer pleasant. He wished he could just disappear. "It's no good trying to get around me by crying," shouted Mr. Yap. "Give me them back right now or I'll call the police." All at once, Patrick was beside him. "They're his," he said. "I know this because he showed them to me at school. A cowboy with a white hat and an Indian in a chief's headdress. He told me he was coming to buy a new one. Omri wouldn't steal." Mr. Yap let go of Omri and looked at Patrick. He knew Patrick quite well because it happened that Patrick's brother had once been his paper boy. "You will vouch for him then?" "Of course I will," said Patrick staunchly. "I'm telling you, I saw them both this afternoon." But still the shopkeeper wasn't absolutely convinced. "Let's see if they fit your description," he said. Omri, who had been staring at Patrick as at some miraculous deliverer, felt his stomach drop into his shoes once more. But then he had an idea. He reached both hands into his pockets. Then he held one hand out slowly, still closed. Everyone looked at it. Although it was actually empty, the other hand he lifted to his mouth as if to stifle a cough and whispered into it, "Lie still, don't move, plastic." Then he put both hands before him and opened them up. The men played along beautifully. There they lay, side by side, stiff and stark, as like lifeless plastic figures, as like lifeless plastic figures could possibly be. In any case, Omri was taking no chances. He gave Mr. Yap just long enough to see that they were dressed as Patrick had said before closing his fingers. Mr. Yap grunted. "Those aren't for my shop anyhow," he said. "All my Indian chiefs are sitting down, and that sort of cowboy is always on a horse. Well, I'm sorry, lad. You'll have to excuse me, but you must admit it did look suspicious." Omri managed a sickly smile. The crowd was melting away. Mr. Yap shuffled back into the shop. Omri and Patrick were left alone on the pavement. "Thanks," said Omri. It came out as croaky as a frog. "That's okay. Have a toffo." That's a kind of candy. They had one each and walked along side by side. After a while, they gave each other a quick grin. "Let's give them some." They stopped, took the men out, and gave each some bits of the chocolate. "That's a reward," said Patrick, "for playing dead." Little Bear then naturally demanded to know what it had all been about, and the boys explained as well as they could. Little Bear was quite intrigued. "Man think Omri steal, Little Bear?" "Yes. And Boone?" Omri nodded. "Omri fool to steal Boone," roared Little Bear, laughing. Was it nice? Boone, stuffing himself with chocolate, gave him a dirty look. "Where woman?" Little Bear asked eagerly. "I've got her." "When make real?" "Tonight." Patrick gave him a look of pure longing, but he didn't say anything. They walked along again. They were getting near Omri's house. Omri was thinking. After a while, he said, "Patrick, what about you staying the night?" Patrick's face lit up like a bulb. "Could I? And see?" "Yes." "Wow, thanks." They ran the rest of the way home. That's the end of chapter 13. So, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Like I said, let's see, we've got 14, 15, and 16. That's it. I feel like I've been reading forever. I hope you guys have enjoyed the story. I can tell there's a few of you that have been listening the entire time. So I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you get a chance after listening to it. The movie's so different, but you get a chance to take a look and see what the differences are and what you like better about each. So have a wonderful weekend, you guys. Stay safe. We'll see you.